welcome so much to Mind Point, the podcast about mental health topics. My name is Justin. I'm the chairman of Love Yourself Canada. I'm joined here by my media representative and secretary of the board, Rob.
Hello, Rob. Welcome to Mind Point. Here for our third episode, and today we're talking about managing stress.
Yeah, processing stress. Today we're joined by Katie, and if you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself, Katie.
Yeah, for sure. So I own and work for a private practice called Bold Lotus Trauma Therapy. And the reason it's called Bold Lotus is bold kind of really, I think, leans into my personality. I'm really passionate about being like authentic and fierce. And then lotus is they're flowers that grow from kind of dirt and like not always the best foundations. And really, I think kind of speaks to how humans sometimes, especially if you experience trauma, can have really hard foundational years and then still be able to grow into something beautiful.
Quick question before we get started. How many White Lotus jokes do you get on a daily basis?
None.
Really?
No, but I love that
wow.
show.
I know. I'm so shocked that your clients aren't just bringing that up.
I've only had like one person ever even ask me about the name.
Yeah, that's crazy. I love it. And that terminology reminds me, I was in an interview once doing an interview job, and they asked me, what kind of tree would you be if you were a tree? And my answer was, I'd be like a pine tree or some sort of evergreen tree. And they were like, why is that? And I was like, well, like the durability. So like they're capable of maintaining like thriving even in like the harshest of environments.
Yeah.
I thrive under stress. So usually when it gets more stressful, especially in a work environment, I get very hyper focused and I really am able to kind of like break things down in a good way. So I felt like it was like the durability of being able to find a way to thrive even in bad soil.
Yeah. That's a really good answer if you were put on the spot.
I know, and I didn't get the job either, which was shocking. I know, but it's fine because we're here now, and that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a weird question.
Weird question, yeah. Like, what kind of tree would you be?
Questions.
Yeah.
What?
I know.
I have no idea what kind of tree I would be.
I know, and how do you I'm super happy I came with that on the spot, but I don't think I could think of a different tree and why I would want to be a different tree. Like, I just got really lucky.
Yeah.
I was able to lean into that.
I don't really know many types of trees.
Like a tree that isn't durable, maybe beauty, like the beautiful tree. Yeah. But I really do think like in Canada, evergreens are a big symbol of just thriving. Our last episode was seasonal depression. So we were talking about blizzards, and you can imagine with how many blizzards we had this year and the never-ending winter.
Being dark so early.
Yeah. Evergreens make a big statement, kind of in just the way we have to navigate.
Yeah. Sometimes
just being outside. Yeah, great. Yeah, so we're going to talk about processing stress today. I know everyone kind of processes stress a little differently. We will probably talk quite a bit about my PTSD today. I know I'm going to be heavily featured in this episode, which was kind of the point, because fight or flight and the way it processes stress works with that it's kind of a big part of that theme. So I'll be opening up quite a bit about some of that stuff that I went through today, but just get us started. Just wanted to ask you basically, like if say someone came to you and said, I'm stressed out, kind of what would you start off with, giving them sort of guidance or advice on how to handle that?
Yeah, for sure. So I always rely on a couple like foundational tools with all of my clients. So I'm not sure if you guys have heard of the term or concept window of tolerance.
I have not. I think I have, but explain it.
Yeah. So it's basically like I have like all my resources I have printed with like laminated, so I can always use them like visually because I know people learn differently. But the window of tolerance is really like everyone's got their window. Some people's are big, some people's are small, but your window is kind of like what you want to live in. That's when you're like cool, calm, collected. You can handle maybe something stressful happens, but you can deal with it and kind of move through your day. Trauma in particular shrinks people's windows. And so if you think of the idea of like, if someone has a reaction and someone might say like, oh, they went from 0 to 60 really quick, like I'm going to guess they're actually not inside their window. And so I teach clients about the symptoms that happen when they're above their window and below their window. So when you're above your window, it's called hyperarousal. And so all the symptoms are like in red, and think of like a volcano, like those big externalized behaviors that if someone was dysregulated, you would see, you would know. They're yelling, property damage, physically aggressive, things like that. And then below, you think of like an iceberg, and all the symptoms are in blue, and it's called hypoarousal. And those are more things that you might not necessarily see visually if someone's dysregulated. So shame, depression, guilt, that's where self-harm happens, things like that. And so I always start out by doing like a symptoms check with people and doing a lot of psycho-ed about the window. And then once they, we'll do like in a context of the last like month or two, what symptoms have been present for you. They'll go through, they'll check them off, and then we'll rate them on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being like least intensive to 5 most intensive. And once they are able to do that, then we will focus on like then how that presents in their body.
Okay.
Right? And so that's where like that stress presentation comes through. And with trauma therapy in particular, you always want to focus on like physiological, like it's called like a bottom-up approach. And so working on like how the body and like physiologically experiences things before going cognitive to the mind. And that's where we develop like safety and like relationship work, right? And so if people are able to understand their symptoms, then we do the work of identifying triggers, what's triggering those symptoms, and then we move to coping strategies.
Great.
I don't know if that answers the question,
That
but
answered it very well, plus
Okay.
more.
Cool.
There's some things I'm definitely going to want to elaborate on a little bit,
Okay.
but I actually had a question for you quickly.
Okay.
So I know an experience just that you had relatively recently that might have been a bit stressful. I believe there was a situation with your car, kind of like livelihood, and I was just curious on how that experience went for you in processing the stress and kind of getting through to finding the solution.
Okay, yeah, so I had my car kind of break down on me and I got stranded, and it was late at night. Didn't really have any options other than getting it towed all the way home or getting it towed to the mechanic and sleeping in the parking lot,
Oh.
which is what I ended up doing, just to save money on the tow and getting an Uber back there in the morning and all that. I sort of developed my strategy for dealing with stress back when I was a teenager. I had a lot of anger going on back in those days, and I sort of had this moment of clarity where I just realized that I was holding on to this anger for no real reason, and all it was really doing was hurting me. You know, whatever the thing or the person that I was angry at wasn't even aware, didn't care about it, wasn't affecting them. And I can't go back and change whatever it is, so what's the point of holding on to this anger? And at that time, it all just kind of evaporated off of me, along with the stress that went with that. And I might have gone a little bit too far the other way. I sort of stopped caring about everything and kind of shut down a little bit or closed myself off to certain things.
You are super chill.
Yeah, and
Like,
we were talking about this,
unrealistically
a
chill.
couple
Yeah.
months ago. You're like, I don't think I've ever seen you angry,
Or upset, or like you
remotely,
brush stress off like so easy. It just doesn't stick to you at all.
Mm-hmm. And I guess it's tough to gauge like whether or not I'm just ignoring the stuff that's there, or whether it's actually not there, and I'm actually.
Like ignoring it versus just like letting it go because you don't need to hold on to it.
Yeah, like I'm convincing myself that it's not even there at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I would call that like avoidance.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a coping mechanism.
Totally.
And I do recognize that, but it's tough to really gauge where that ends and begins.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously no one's impervious to stress,
Mm-hmm.
which I kind of convinced myself that I was at a certain point. It took me a few years to kind of dial that back to being somewhere in the middle. And so for that particular situation, I just kind of accepted it right away. I was like, these things happen. Assessed my options and picked the one that best suited my situation and what I needed. And you know, it was all right. Slept in my car before. I've had worse. So
It's like,
and it ended up working out.
yeah, you got through it.
Yeah.
You
It was an expensive repair. I had to replace some brakes.
Yeah. Still able to drive
They
out here.
seized up on me. But yeah.
Did you handle it all yourself, or did you reach out to anyone?
Well, my parents did help to supplement sort of the loss financially. It was right in December, like right before Christmas. And so they were like, well, you know, I was about to do my shopping that day, and I was literally texting my mom about ideas and stuff. And then I texted her back once I got the quote for how much it was going to be. I was like, yeah, never mind.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to be affording any gifts for anybody. And she was like, oh, well, you know, at least like get something for the kids or something. And I was like, okay, yeah, I want to do that. And so they did shoot me a bit of money to help me through that.
But you did talk to people too. You talked to me and you talked to Mika. We were well aware of like what you were going through as friends, and that, like, you were stressed out. And it was actually interesting because it was the first time that, like, we're film student buddies, right? So it's one of the first times where you were actively like, bro, like, I am stressed out right now. We cannot talk about this podcast right now. I got this on my plate. And I was like, wow, like, it was a chance for me to actually be there for you and be like, okay, like, if I can help you with this, your personal problem, which is also affects everything you do for work anyways, like, let me know. So just kind of able to actually offer you emotional and moral support for the first time. So that was like why I brought that up too, is that was an interesting experience. Like, you were very honest and open about just, you didn't brush it away. You just said, like, you're very authentic about your experience. Yeah.
But in my mind, I wasn't mentioning it like,
you were pretty
because I needed support.
No,
I was just like, oh, by the way, this is what happened. Like, I more look at it as a funny story. I'm just like, oh, look at how, you know,
ridiculous
how crappy my luck can be.
Yeah.
But you're very empathetic, and Mika as well, very empathetic people. And so when I share some stuff like that, you immediately jump to like emotional support. Like, oh man, that's crazy. Like, listen, I know we've been throwing a lot at you recently, so don't worry about it too much.
Yeah, because I'm like, Rob, I want you here, and Rob, I want you there, and you're like, dude, I don't have a car.
Yeah, I don't have a
like,
car.
So I'm like, okay, I don't want you anywhere. I want you to figure yourself out first, and then
take me a month or so to.
Yeah, like I was like, and if you can't, we'll talk. We'll figure out how to do the podcast differently, or just film it differently, or this and that, right? And so no, it was that was why I brought that up. Is like, you just watching you process that and deal with it and come to your solutions was like, oh, okay, great. This is just done very differently than the way
when I told people about it, like told my parents about it, they're like, oh, why didn't you call us or whatever? And I was like, well, it was 1 a.m. I didn't want to wake you guys up, like.
But that's when you're supposed to call your parents, just so you know, like, in the future,
like,
when it's 1 a.m. and you're sleeping in your car. Yeah.
And help you out. And I was like, yeah, but figured I'd just deal with it myself.
And I think a lot of people, I think there's this when it comes to shame and processing stress too. We talked about this when we were talking about supporting others and asking for help, where people feel like the shame or the stress is theirs to deal with alone, and they have to carry that weight because it's their stress. But that's not necessarily the way it needs to be.
Well, and that's why I asked, did you connect with anyone? And I actually meant like that night, because people who tend to lean in and think that they can deal with everything themselves, that's like an avoidance strategy, and it is all developed from like years of like during your childhood of like learning that your needs, it's not safe to be met like externally, so you're just going to meet them yourself. That's why I asked you, like, in that moment, did you problem solve on your own, or did you have anyone help you?
I definitely thought about it, and I think I did text my dad at some point at near 1 o'clock, but he's already passed out. So
which is funny because
for me, they've already done so much for me over the years. They've bailed me out of too many situations that I can count. And so I just was like, I do not want to add to that list of feeling like a burden.
Yeah, that's so common that people feel like that, for sure.
And so yeah, one of my big stressors is my financial situation. So when it comes to something like that, where it's like a big expenditure that I wasn't expecting, it's gonna really kind of set me back and put me in a bit of a hole. It was like I had to weigh my options, and
Without you like verbalizing, like, "Hey, I'm stressed about this," would anyone know from like looking at you?
probably not.
No. So you're more
This is
that
his
iceberg.
face.
Yeah,
This is his
Yeah.
face
I'm
all
the
the time.
iceberg.
This is his only emotional expression that he's capable of doing is what we're looking at right now. Sorry. Whereas, again, I'm in comparison to me, who's the polar opposites. I'm extremely
You would be able to
expressive.
tell.
Very expressive.
You can tell immediately when
Yeah.
I'm upset. Immediately, just by looking at my face, I'm so expressive. So you stick two of us beside each other,
Yeah.
and it's polar opposite, right? We could be feeling the exact same feeling, and you would not be able to tell in any way, shape, or form. And
I'm more
it's-
like you then.
yeah. And for me too, like for me, I'm the polar opposite of him in processing stress too. I have to share my stress. I can't process stress all by myself.
Okay.
I can, but I prefer to collaborate on the processing stress process in general.
Yeah.
So I have a great group of friends. I've got a good partner. Usually when I'm stressed out, the first thing I do is I go and I talk to somebody, and I'm like, I have to bounce this off of another person, not just to get a little bit out of my system, but sometimes you get a reflection back that you wouldn't have gotten if you were just talking to yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it is a collaborative project. Like, this is why I'm stressed. You know, validation is great, but solutions are also very valid, right? And I've got a really great group of friends that understand how to validate my experience first, and then how to support me, and then how to like guide me and give me guidance that I can choose to use or not as I see fit. So I find that without that, I'm not really even sure how I would process stress, to be honest with you. I would be probably incapable of doing it internally, like 100% internally. I think it would cause me a lot of distress. Like a lot of depression, probably.
Well, that kind of feeds into like the knowledge that I work on with clients too. Is like it's not a choice, right? Like, so if we think of like the fight, flight, freeze, that's a biological response, right? And so the example I always use is like a firefighter. Like they, most of them, I think, to be successful would need a fight response, right? Like there's this big fire disaster happening. You lean into the conflict and you go and deal with it. But imagine if you train to be a firefighter and then learn that when the fire actually happened, you were like running away, or like you froze and you shut down. So it's not like an actual conscious choice. So for you, when you're saying like, I reach out to friends, I have to organize my thoughts through conversation, like that is like how you're like biologically wired to manage your stress. But I would wonder for you, like, because if we're talking about processing stress, and I know before this we were talking about like your body and your mind. If you didn't say anything, what is your body doing or feeling?
I would be probably. So I'm not. I most likely I can predict, because honestly I've never even tried that. But based on how my body initially responds to stress before I have a chance to reach out to someone, it would be volatile physical responses, nausea, panic attacks in general, which bring a lot of headaches. I get them in a way when they do come where they're 100% debilitating. So I'm throwing up and I'm actively unable to do anything, or I can't think straight. I'm too dizzy. I have a headache. I can't focus.
Wow. Okay.
And it is interesting because it's changed, but not necessarily for the better yet. So before my PTSD recovery, that was happening, but it had happened when there's no stress. So it would happen in delayed ways, where I would be on a bus, or I would just be shopping, or there'd be no reason, and it was a delayed response to maybe something that had happened to me weeks or months or whatever that had never been processed. And now that I'm capable of actually processing the stress, they're happening when they're needed. Something stressful's happening, my body's telling me I'm stressed out, but the intensity level hasn't gone down in any way, shape, or form. So it's my body's not feeling as safe as my mind is feeling yet.
Right.
So the disconnect between the two of them is something I'm currently, specifically when I'm trying to process stress, is just like my current mental health hurdle journey situation.
Sure, yeah.
Where like the thoughts of processing stress, using cognitive therapy, being able to get my mindset back to where it needs to be, easy to do. I can do that in a matter of minutes. My body doesn't follow suit for a long time. It could be hours, be the next day I start to feel better. Whereas I think I was expecting maybe the connection between those two to be a little stronger, faster. So right now we're just in a scenario of like, how do you go to work and have a stressful day without coming home and being sick all night? You know what I mean? And how do you handle those things when you know mentally you can handle them? How do you tell your body that? How do you build that trust between your brain and your body again? Because it feels like over the years that it's like my body doesn't trust my brain to give it the truth. And so it just overreacts to everything.
Yeah.
Right?
You're like hyper vigilant, like you're on alert.
Yeah.
So if you, again, going back to the window of tolerance concept, if you are at red, like that volcano, you want to do grounding. So like softer, gentler things for your body, where it sounds like you would actually need to like rev up your body almost from like, so like avoidant and like low, like the blue, the iceberg, and rev up. So for you and your body, like, I would really ask you to like think about like any type of grounding, like mindfulness strategies. A weighted blanket is like the best thing ever. Things like that are like slowing you down, but specific to your body.
Yeah, I have a problem slowing down.
Same here.
I have a problem meditating. I have a problem sitting there but not doing something. I have a problem just not doing. And I know
that's avoidance.
That's my style of avoidance. Is that was built in because I was avoiding the PTSD traumas that I don't need to avoid anymore, but my body still hasn't realized that, so it goes into an extroverted form of avoidance where I'm still reacting, but I'm not reacting in the way that's helping me in any way, shape, or form. I'm still avoiding the actual thing that's helping me, even though I know it's there. How do I physically get my physicality there? You know what I mean? And,
totally.
We're still just there's lots of ways to do that, and we're just gonna find out kind of what fits for my personality type.
Yeah.
And then we'll get there. But it's an interesting experience where I really thought like this is gonna be immediate. Like I'm gonna feel so much better physically once I'm better mentally, and I didn't realize that like healing takes time, and we're not done yet. You know what I mean? It's gonna take more time, even though I feel better.
Well, and our bodies are so smart. I always tell people our bodies are way more intelligent than our mind because they know. Yeah.
It knows that the healing's so fresh still that it still needs to be on guard. It's protecting me from a mental health relapse almost. You know what I mean? Like some sort of digression, which I know is not going to happen because my awareness is so high. It would be virtually impossible to regress at this point for me. But how do you relate that? How do you tell them like this is real this time?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like my body is still dealing with the trauma, even though my mind
term
doesn't
is like
feel.
Body bracing. You're like bracing
Body bracing
for like impact.
Yeah.
When there's even not
there's
like,
no
danger
impact
there. Yeah.
And even though and it's like that's the best way of describing it, because it does feel like I'm bracing myself, like I'm driving a car and I'm bracing for like a high speed impact, but I'm driving at 5 kilometers an hour and I bump against, a parking sign, and my body acts like I just got in a fender bender.
Yeah.
And how do I tell it that it wasn't a fender bender, that it was a boop? You know what I mean? It doesn't understand the difference between those two things yet.
Yeah.
Bracing. What was it called? Bracing? Body bracing? Body bracing. That's crazy. That's cool.
It's kind of the idea, like, I think it's way more obvious or common for people, like anxious thoughts, like the what ifs, like all that negative, like jumping to conclusions, mind reading, right? Making assumptions. Well, your body is doing it too. We just don't put words to it often.
That's crazy.
Because we focus so much on cognition.
Yeah. And it's a lot easier to consciously work on those other things, which I also deal with all the time, because that's a PTSD thing. But I can use cognitive therapy. I can convince my brain consciously that that's not what's happening, because that's how I can communicate between my conscious and my unconscious better now from all those mental health techniques that I've been learning over the years. The body is harder to connect with in that manner, I'm finding. It's like I'm being told like the healing takes time to trickle down, and you just have to keep doing it, and then eventually your body will catch up.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we'll get there. But yeah, body bracing, that's great. Never thought of that, but it's what I'm doing. I feel like I'm bracing for a car accident for sure in those moments.
Yeah, my one friend, she's very like kind of calm and very collected, but has done a ton of therapy work. She kind of brought it to my attention like 2 years ago because I was feeling like very amped up all the time and like this like buzzing energy, and she's like asked me about like, well, what do you do to take care of yourself? And like everything I was doing, even outside of work, was still very high activity. I was doing kickboxing, like playing sports, like still very like high up there. And she's like, you do nothing that calms you down.
Yeah.
She's like, everything you do is at like a level 10. So then I joined yoga. And she really like that stands out for me too, because I was like, I'm very go. And then when I sit down to watch a show, like 10 minutes in, I'm like, nope, okay, I got to do this. I'm moving on to other things.
It's so hard to like stop.
Oh, so
and
hard.
like I used to convince myself like, oh, I don't want to stop because I don't want to sit with my thoughts. So when I was now capable of sitting with my thoughts, I thought that would just stop happening.
Yeah.
But it's not, because it's a different part of me that's programmed to do that than just my conscious way of.
Well, I think like there's a lot of pressure to be productive oftentimes, and so if you're relaxing, you're missing an opportunity to be productive.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Well,
so
I think I've convinced myself that I'm scared of being bored. So there's an internal like defense mechanism that was programmed in during the trauma building, where I've convinced myself that being alone and being bored is a horrible thing. I should be scared of it. And so I don't like doing it. Like even when we're just at home and we're watching TV, I'll go on my computer for a minute, or I'll multitask first, but I have to remind myself, no, come back to this moment and just be in the moment, because you only live so long. How many moments are you gonna have, right? And like it took a long time for me to realize that like I do a lot of fun things. I'm always out there going. If I don't stop and take breath, that's all a waste of my time. I'm not experiencing it. I'm not actually absorbing those moments.
Yeah, you're just thinking on to the next.
And it does. And it really is difficult for me to get into those mindful moments. But yeah, I think that is the biggest technique that I've had given to me and taught to me, that I think is like the game changer. It was the game changer for me. It's like learning how to be mindful, learning how to trick yourself even a little bit into being mindful, and just proving to yourself that it's okay to stop.
Well, it doesn't have to be long. Like, I encourage people to do like a 5-minute mindful moment of drinking their morning coffee. How does it smell? How does it taste? How does it feel in your body? Are you sitting? Are you standing? Right? If you're in the shower, what's the shampoo smell like? Like it could be 30 seconds, but it's still, that's 30 seconds that you had being mindful that you wouldn't have had if you didn't practice the skill. And it's a muscle. Like anything else, we have to do it.
And I kind of mix my mindful reflection time is I got a half an hour walk to work every day.
Oh,
so
perfect.
To and from. So on the way to work, usually I'm a little tired. I'm so sorry, my stomach is grumbling. I had breakfast. I apologize.
I didn't even hear it.
On the way to work, I'll put music in, and it's more a mindful of emotion. How am I feeling on the way to work? What's this music? How's it hitting me? And then the way home, it's a reflection. So how was my day? How was my week?
That's amazing.
How do I feel? And I'm forced to have those moments.
And I love that you're moving.
Right?
Movement is really beneficial.
So it's helping so much.
Yeah.
And so I'm just combining transportation with mindful moments, because I find in my busy life, taking the bus or walking or whatever I'm doing, those are the times I have the most alone and able to just be mindful and in my own space and in my own mind, and not doing anything. I'm incapable of working on the bus. I'm incapable of working when I'm walking to work, right? So I have that opportunity. I'm trying my best to make sure I'm taking that. And without those, I feel like I would be more stressed out if I didn't have those to and from down moments.
So in their like reflection or the check-in, I would ask you to also ask yourself, like, how's my body feeling?
Yeah, well, I asked myself that a lot, and it was cold because we just got through winter. So now that the weather's a little bit better, I'm hoping that it'll be a different response.
Yeah.
But you don't want to ask your body how it's doing when you get home and you already know you're frozen, Because walking to work for half an hour in a blizzard is less fun. It's harder to be mindful.
Yeah.
And we had a lot.
You're mindful of the
blizzards
cold.
This year. You know, a lot. My boss did this thing. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not losing any weight because I'm just walking to work like this, all cuddled up and whatever. And he's like, well, you lose more weight when you shiver. And I'm like, it doesn't feel like I'm losing any more weight. I hope I am, but it does not feel like I'm losing weight. It feels like I'm literally just curled up in a ball and I can't. I'm cocooned on the walk to work. But it's when I get those moments, when I get a chance to be comfortable enough to do it, I very much take advantage of those moments. And it's highly valuable for my daily processing. When you're busy all the time, you don't process your thoughts, you don't process your emotions, right? And I like being busy. I like being busy because I like being busy.
Yeah.
I want to be able to be busy and also be mindful at the same time, right? And bring that balance in. So it's not an unhealthy thing. I'm busy and I'm doing those things that make me amped up because I'm an extrovert, and being busy pumps me up and inspires me and gives me an adrenaline rush in a good way, but not using that as a defense mechanism at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. And just the other thing I wanted to mention is you talked about laying around the house or watching TV with your partner. So is your partner's energy as high as yours?
Oh, no.
Okay.
He's better at balance and calming down and relaxing and doing those things than I am.
Yeah.
We do balance each other out in a good way though. When his energy is high, it usually is in a way where mine's not. So we're lucky that we're able to have that, because he gets stressed out too. But he gets stressed out in a very different way than me. So it works out well, because when I get stressed out, it's in a way that doesn't trigger him or make him feel uncomfortable. It's very third person. So he's able to approach it in a way where it doesn't affect him, and it's the same with me, and it's just the way we express ourselves.
Yeah.
But overall, he can sit there and calm down and play a video game for an hour. I can't even when I'm doing something that's supposed to calm me down, I can't do it for a long time. He can sit and spend a day relaxing. He can spend time just doing it and just investing the time into just calming down or doing something leisurely, whereas I'm like I got an hour or two, and then I'm like, I just gotta do something else. I gotta cook a meal, I gotta clean a room, I gotta go on my phone and go do something.
Yeah.
If I have the energy, I need to be using it to be productive, and that's not what all my energy needs to be used for.
Right.
Yeah. So he does teach me a lot of being in the moment.
Yeah, and to co-regulate with someone that's safe. So if you're high energy and your partner's a bit more neutral energy, even just sitting with them that energy is really helpful, and co-regulation is just as important as self-regulation, some of the tools you're doing on your own.
And it is, because it works both ways. So when he's stressed out, I'm not. And so he will co-regulate off me, and then I will do the same off him.
That's a good partnership.
Yeah. So it does work. It's not the above all solution though. We still both have to be extremely communicative about our emotions and our thoughts. We don't expect each other to read each other's minds. None of that is happening. We understand that to have that process work successfully, you also need to communicate healthily and make sure you're aware of what's going on too, so that isn't just I wouldn't say every couple should co-regulate against each other, because you need to have the communication skills and the self-awareness skills to be able to actually execute that properly as well. So it's a matter of making sure you have a healthy relationship first, and then if that's the case, you definitely should be utilizing each other in that way, because that's exactly what that's for.
Yeah, so see it as an option, not the end all be all. Yeah.
I still need to regulate my body on my own in some way, shape, or form. He can't solve all of my nausea problems. You know what I mean? And I wouldn't expect him to. Great. So that's me in a nutshell. Overall, it's just a matter of kind of figuring out what works best in the moment. I think the physical responses have always been the most important part of my healing. It's how do I get rid of the panic attacks? How do I get rid of all the physiological responses to stress, and not have them debilitating me as an extrovert specifically? How annoying basically that is, where I want to be an extrovert, but your body is not letting you because of things that were out of your control, right? So it's nice to kind of start to get some of that freedom and self-control and empowerment back. But it's going to be a process. I mean, it's not, I think, say it's like a hill or a journey, but it's definitely more like climbing a hill. Like you got, valleys and peaks, and but you're always kind of still heading upwards in some way.
Yeah, it's work.
Yeah,
it's really hard work.
Yeah. So, let's continue. Let's just check the time here real quick.
I've had friends who were into meditation.
Yes.
Explained it to me, and I tried it a few times. For me, I kind of need to have some music going. For me, that's sort of my version of meditation.
Sure, yeah.
I love to, I do spend a lot of time alone, and I do enjoy that. I do love music, so I'll just put some music on and close my eyes. Just sort of lay out on my bed or on the couch.
Do you do that just proactively or only when stressed?
That's a regular thing for me.
That's great.
I just really love music. It's pretty much always on. First thing in the morning, I wake up, I got to put on something to get me energized and get me up. And it's just something that's, if I'm not doing something that I need my ears for something else, then I got music going.
I have something I want your opinion on.
Sure.
When I meditate, I fall asleep.
Oh, okay.
I can't calm my brain down without going to sleep. That's the only time I can calm my brain down. I don't know what that's about. I can calm my brain down when I need to go to sleep, but it's almost like any other time my brain really comes down to a meditative level. My body is like, okay, bedtime. And I'm not sure if that's just normal or natural, but it's vitally impossible for me to keep any sort of energy levels up while I'm bringing my anxiety levels down, if that makes sense, right? Like maybe it's just an exhausting experience for me in general, and then I'm just tired at the end. But that's my problem with meditating is when I meditate, it's nap time. I'm ready to go to bed, and it's extremely difficult to fight that off, which is why I keep myself almost at a higher energy level than most.
Because you're either super maxed or you're really fatigued.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so I think I'll speak for myself too. I think the general idea of meditation almost sounds like that, right? Or a lot of people would say it's boring, or it doesn't work for me. You hear all the time, and I work with teens a lot. So a teenager, it's going to be really hard sometimes to engage in okay, every morning do some mindfulness activities. So there's quick wins or quick strategies you can do that aren't that traditional okay, sit, close your eyes in a dark room and listen to this lady talk. So the two things I would really encourage people to do, one is it's just called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it's engaging your senses. And the thing that I say is it's really hard / almost impossible to be engaged and attuned to one of your senses and also still be distressed by a moment. So you can do them in any order you want, but so if I asked you guys right now to tell me 5 things that you can see in this room, what would you say?
Okay. Lots of plants, a beautiful painting. But I can see because you're redirecting your thought focus at that point. So it's a matter of and that's something, because it's actually something my therapist said to me is, instead of walling up, your thoughts are like a river and you're trying to dam them up, and that's not working for you. So instead of trying to stop them and dam them up, just redirect them somewhere else so you can keep the thoughts moving forward, but you're redirecting that energy and that effort into something that's more beneficial for you physically.
Yeah, and the senses, I always end it with things that you can, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. So I encourage people to carry really sour or really sweet things on them. And then that again brings you back into your body, and it's not solving anything. The stressful thing could still be there. It's just giving you a moment to reconnect with your body. And same thing with breath work. There's so many easy breath work
breathing
activities you can do, and again, people do not buy into that.
It does work. The breathing thing works.
When my friends were trying to guide me through meditation, they're just focus on your breathing. That's really the core of it. That's how that helps you to clear your mind and not have it wander and not fall asleep, because you are focused on your breathing.
Yeah, and it regulates your internal system. Yeah.
And I have a technique that was taught to me for removing those thoughts. Not removing them, but like removing them for the moment so you can have that break, right? Removing them when they're starting to become overwhelming or they're not doing any good for you. So the technique was an imaginary technique. So you close your eyes and you imagine a chest box, just a black room with a chest box, right? You imagine all of your thoughts going into this chest box, and you're piling them in there, and you're thinking this thought goes in there, and this thought goes in there, and this is my stress from work, and this is my stress from my relationship, and this is my stress from my parents or whatever. And then you shut that chest and you lock it, and then you watch the chest just start to slowly go away. And as the chest becomes a little dot, then you take 2 deep breaths, and when you're done those deep breaths, you should be more regulated. And it's the thing that works the best for me when I'm like can't stop overthinking about something, or I can't stop that fight or flight anxiety response. And I've actually also utilized it on other people as well when they're stressing out about something. It's just a chance to remove the thought for a moment so you can regulate your body, and then you can come back to it and approach it, with more balance.
Yeah, it's called containment. So, right? And
that sounds about right.
Yeah, like you're containing things, right? And so like you can ask people like to do an activity that's very similar, but you say to them like pick something that is a box kind of vibe, and then also with a lock. So I've seen people do like luggage, a pickle jar, like they get to create it, and then they contain. So that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, and then again, you just go back whenever you want to readdress that thought.
Yeah, because then you're able to manage it.
Yeah. So that's like my biggest one for thought management in general. Like when you need, because your body will connect too fast, like it'll connect to that emotion, and you need to regulate your emotion first so you're prepared to.
Well, it helps with like emotional reactivity, right? Like my huge thing, I get frustrated so quickly. I think I process almost too quickly, and I live with 2 people that actually I would say like have a bit more like they under process, and so they move through life slower, and then that aggravates me. So I have to breathe. And then come at it with ideally a calmer approach. It doesn't always happen.
But it's good. Like that is, I think the biggest thing too is other people aren't me, right? And they're again the extrovert versus introvert. I have a lot of introverts in my life, so they teach me, hey, you know what? If this person isn't up where I am, maybe I don't necessarily need to be up where I am. You know what I mean? And give me a chance to reflect. Like, am I overreacting? Am I appropriately reacting? Am I underreacting? Or should I take this away from now? And I think actually this one thing I'm just explaining to my partner recently is when we do get into a heavy conversation, maybe borderline argument, I'll say like, I need a moment. Like I need to take a quick break from this conversation. And he'll be like, I don't understand why you do that. Because he doesn't need that. He can continue to have those conversations until they're fully resolved. Whereas sometimes I need to step away so I can regulate for a moment and then come back with a clear head.
That's a beautiful skill.
Yeah, and so it's been really interesting, like trying to vocalize the explanation of why I need to do that to him, because he doesn't need that skill. He's capable of just kind of going through it till the result, and then the resolution is how he gets his balance, right? Whereas me, sometimes I need I'm amped up, right, in that fight or flight moment.
Yeah, you're the volcano, you're the red. Yeah.
I need to bring myself down to a moment where I can think clearly and not have my emotions making my decisions for me. And that's something where he just regulates himself throughout the whole experience, right? So it took me a minute to make him understand why that's even necessary for me specifically. And that's really, really key to navigating stressful conversations for me, especially like a stressful conversation that's like, so we've had stressful conversations that lasted 3 hours because we're both very communicative people, right? So how do you deal with the long term of that conversation? Sometimes an hour and a half in, I need a break. Go have a drink, not an alcoholic drink, but like some water. I'm gonna take a walk.
I'm happy you said that, because even like the 3 simple things that I think we often take for granted are when you're supposed to be engaging in this like kind of tense conversation is, are you hydrated? Have you slept well? And have you eaten?
Yeah, exactly.
for me, I'm like, I need to go eat something.
Yeah, and the thing, if there's anything that I need, that's the perfect time to give yourself something you need too, and then you're feeling comfortable, and then we come back and it's a whole different experience. The second half of the
more
conversation.
skilled.
Yeah. So, and the thing, the emotions come they come right away. They come at the first half of that conversation. So that break is necessary, just to make sure that those emotions don't, rule the topic. Right. Yeah.
And I would say that's a skill in self-awareness, that you even know that about yourself, right? And that, I think, speaks volumes about the therapy work you've done, because the average person can't see that all the time, and needs that perspective from a therapist or a friend or a mental health professional to say, like, this is what I'm seeing. And just like you said, I'm not getting the best of you when you're living your whole day in emotion.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, it's like I said, it's work. Regulating your emotions, it's not something we're taught how to do. It's not something that's even easy to teach someone how to do.
And it's infinite work. There's no end. You're not getting to the end here.
And just, I think, breaking that down, that's the whole point of why mental health is stigmatized in general. Is, I think, the thing I'm consistently telling people, my staff, clients, volunteers, people I interact with, is it's not an A to B journey. Right? It's the rest of your life. It's this, you're taking care of your mental health the same way you would take care of your physical health. You don't stop going to the doctor at 35 for checkups.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're not done having checkups. If anything, you need to put more work into it as you go along. And the same is true with your mental health. As you get older, you need to put more effort into taking care of your mind, because it's getting wear and tear from the stress of the world, right? And I think for me, it was mind-blowing. Like, the first time I knew about mental health, I knew all this stuff, I went to my mom, and she works at a hospital. I said, why aren't they teaching this in school? Why am I 24 years old finding this out now, right? And this breaks at every single topic we have on this podcast, every single PSA we do, it all breaks down to that same common denominator of, the reason we're talking about this is because it's not talked about enough. Someone's gonna, listen to my experience, or listen to Rob's experience, or listen to your experiences and go, oh, that makes sense. That relates to me, and I'm not hearing that anywhere else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And get educated in different ways. Not just through clinical education, which they are offering in schools now, which is good. They're doing really better, but experience education as well. Breaking it down to the fact that we're all different people, and we all need different forms of treatment or care, or to keep ourselves healthy. And while educating yourself clinically is extremely helpful, when you're not living the experience and talking to people or trying in your daily life, you're not really getting the full benefits of mental health care in general.
Well, and even like in the therapy space, like really challenging like those power dynamics of like, oh, just because I happen to have some more education than you does not make me an expert by any means. Like, let's co-create like solutions together and really lean on each other for skills. I think that's one thing that's really served me well in my experience with my clients, is because I never want to make someone feel like, oh, I have therapy today, right? Like, I want them to be like, oh my God, I can't wait to tell you this thing. And so that, I think, is, you can't teach that in school clinically. Like, that you either are someone that gets that or you don't.
Yeah, I'm sure that the tactics and the methods are constantly evolving.
Yeah, but it's all about the relationship and the fit. And like, if you didn't like your dentist, like, I'm sure you would probably go find a different dentist, right? Where lots of people get stuck in like, oh, I tried therapy once, like it didn't work, or I didn't like my therapist. It's like,
you got to shop around.
Yeah, so
it's a process.
When people come to me and they're like, oh yeah, I did therapy, that's one of my first questions in my consult is, have you done therapy before? Most people have, and then I'm like, okay, so what did you like, what didn't you like? And I'm like, thanks for trying again. A lot of people would just be like, nope, doesn't work.
But like, would you say that to a medical doctor?
No.
That's what blows my mind.
Yeah.
It's like when you compare a mental health professional to a medical doctor, people are like, oh, those are the same. They're both medical professionals. You should be treating them on the same level. And this is what it is.
And I think it's just that stigma that we still have to push through even in 2025 of like, your mind is just as important as your body. And if you're going to advocate and challenge maybe if you got poor medical care, like for a broken arm, for example, you should be doing the same.
Yeah.
With
And
mental.
I'm a perfect example of the fact that they are actually intertwined. Like I have no physical problems with my body, but I'm physically ill because of a mental health condition. You know what I mean? It makes a big difference.
It's that body-mind connection.
Yeah, and it's just like mind-blowing of that. Still today trying to just teach people that they're connected in ways that you normally wouldn't think of. You know what I mean? Ways that aren't obvious, in ways that I think a lot of people, it's easy for them to just avoid.
Yeah.
Right.
It's probably scary.
It is. It's a lot easier to avoid than and shut down than it is to open up and be vulnerable. But it's the suffering, right? Like, you're never gonna be happy if you're avoiding. It's just not gonna be possible. So sure, you're not dealing with the pain of being vulnerable, which is really difficult, is somewhat even like torture, sure, but you're not getting any of the benefits either. You're not getting any of the benefits of life, right? And I think everyone that's been through, that I know, addiction recovery or PTSD recovery, any sort of mental health journey, they say, like, I would not change this. Even though it was hard and even though it sucked so bad, like, they're still doing it. Because they know that the moments they do get that are good, even though they're a lot less often, completely outweigh the bad moments. And it's just a matter of, like, that only happens when you stick to it. That doesn't happen when you give up. So a lot of people, when they give up, they don't really understand that balance.
Right.
Where when you really stick to it, a good example is my best friend. She has a personality disorder. And so she's been doing medication and therapy and a bunch of different stuff. She's PTSD as well. And, like, sometimes when she gets home from therapy, I'll call her or I'll try to reach out to her, and she's like, I just don't want to talk to you. I don't want to talk to anyone today. This sucked. Like, I hate therapy so much. Oh my God, I hate it. But she never stops going. She knows that if she doesn't finish this journey, she'll never ever feel better.
Right. She's
right.
investing in herself.
Worse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and she does. There's times where she's doing so great now. There's times where she's really happy, and she's found she teaches me now how to appreciate the small things in life, like just stop and smell the flowers type of advice, right? Because she's able to find balance and regulation in her own life. But it's a lot of work. It's so much work, and you have to want it. You have to really, really want it to put in the amount of effort it's going to take.
The earlier you can start, the much better.
Yeah. And again, it's
so much of what contributes to mental health crises comes from your childhood most of the time, right? And God forbid there's some trauma that happens there. That's going to be very hard for you to process 10, 15 years later.
Yeah. Well, the people won't have PTSD if they're processing their emotions.
I say that to my teenagers, clients that come. I'm like, you either come now or you come back when you're 40.
Exactly what I'm saying. Like, process it now, deal with it now, because it's not going to go away.
Yeah.
You can avoid it all you want, but it will come back to haunt you later. And I am living proof of that existing. And I'm a communicator, so I had no problem communicating my feelings as a kid, but I didn't know how to communicate my trauma. I didn't even realize I was being traumatized.
Totally.
I didn't even know what trauma was. Can I imagine the knowledge I have now, having that at 10 years old?
Yeah.
My life would be very different.
They need to be teaching it in schools, right? Like, I know, like, in the last, decade or two, they've really infused, like, the idea of consent and things like that in the health class. Like, they also need to be teaching these regulation skills and putting words to these big feelings that are happening.
Like, some of them more
kids.
in depth, emotions specifically. Like, they're getting better with mental health. They teach depression and anxiety, and that's great because we had none of that, and that's wonderful. But they're not teaching emotional regulation. They're not teaching the basis of how do you deal with your emotions and how do your emotions affect your thoughts.
Well, or even, like, I think there's a gap even in emotional literacy. Like, I'll work with youth that'll come, and because they're taught about depression, for example, like, they're like, I'm depressed. And it's like, well, let's back that up. Like, what are you feeling? And then, like, using the emotion wheel to, like, break it down. Or, like, I'm anxious. And they say the word anxious or anxiety, like, 12 times in the first, 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, so we're not using that word anymore. Let's use different words.
Yeah, you have to be able to identify your emotions and understand what you're feeling properly. And it's like I was talking to you about another project I'm working on. the main point of that project is everything boils down to your emotions. And a lot of the system that we're taught is that your thoughts are more important, but your thoughts actually technically come secondary in priority to your emotions. Your thoughts come first in how you want to manipulate your emotions, but your thoughts aren't more important than your emotions. And so there's even a disconnect within the mental health community itself, I'm noticing, where certain mental health professionals are like, your thoughts are more important, your thoughts, your thoughts,
Oh,
your
really?
thoughts.
Okay.
But the reason you're doing your thoughts is because the emotions. So your emotions are the more important. You need to be focusing more on teaching people how to identify those first, and not just telling them if you change your thought it'll change your emotion, because they don't even understand what that properly means.
Yeah, it's about balancing those two
Yeah.
things out. Not
They
necessarily
need to be
prioritizing
equally
one
important.
over
Yeah, honoring
Yeah,
both.
They
yeah,
gotta be-
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think when we get there, that'll raise the education level like unrealistic. Like
The way I've always thought about emotions is I've heard people say controlling your emotions. To me, that word just doesn't really sit right with me. It makes it seem like your emotions are this external thing that you're trying to wrangle.
Yeah.
I prefer to use like understand and utilize
Yeah.
your emotions
Yeah.
for what they're there for,
Yeah.
which is to be a part of you.
Yes, they're important. They're there for a reason. Even if they're hurting us, they're there for a reason.
And I'm sure people who use control, they're probably meaning that.
Regulate, but
Because when you say control, it's got a negative connotation.
Yeah.
well, it's
It
like
means
it's
they're out,
It
they're
means
too
they're out
big.
of control, right?
yeah, and a lot of people could also identify that as avoid, push down, dismiss. You know what I mean? You're controlling them by not acknowledging them in the first place. It's not the terminology that should be used, right? It's too vague. You need to properly say, like, you regulate. Your goal isn't to control, it's to identify.
Yeah.
It's to understand your emotions.
Yeah.
Because if you don't understand your emotion, it doesn't matter if you change your thoughts. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are like, well, I tried that thing you said, that cognitive thing where I tried to change my thoughts, didn't work. But it's because they didn't understand why they were upset in the first place.
Yeah.
Well,
You know what I mean?
each specific emotion requires a different
Yeah.
approach.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But you got to identify it first.
Anger, it was like, I feel like that's one you really need to understand and utilize to be able to put it where it needs to be instead
Yeah.
of letting it take over and you end up having these outbursts.
But that's on self-awareness we were taught. That's something you had to teach yourself as an adult with your own therapist and your own mental health journey. So, you know, it gets kind of to a point where if a self-awareness and emotional awareness was more common in young people, would we all be suffering from mental health problems as adults? You know what I mean? Probably not. Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, that makes sense. Are you guys okay?
Yeah, I think together.
Oh,
It's okay. We're almost past an hour, guys, anyway, so we'll probably wrap this up. So, yeah, great time. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this episode of Mind Point. And that's a wrap.
awesome.